students, how are you all? Welcome to the third part of our unit Structure of Atom of class 11. In the previous lecture, we had in the previous video lecture, part 2 of Structure of Atom, we had studied about the important phenomena like photoelectric effect. We also studied about the lying spectrum of hydrogen atom. In this lecture, I hope you all have gone through that video, and if you have any queries, you can write in the comment section and ask your queries. In this video lecture, we will be proceeding towards the next topic, and that is the Bohr's atomic model for hydrogen atom. What are the various significance of the Bohr's atomic model for hydrogen atom? And we had already discussed earlier about the two atomic models given by Sir J.J. Thomson and Rutherford. Now, the major drawback of Rutherford's atomic model, as we discussed earlier, was that it could not explain the stability of the atom. That was overcome by the Neil Bohr's atomic model, and let us now study the Bohr's model of hydrogen atom. So to proceed with, here are some postulates for Bohr's atomic model. This model you have also studied in your lower classes, so you might be acquainted with the various postulates of Bohr's atomic model. Bohr's atomic model postulate number 1 says the electron in hydrogen atom moves around the nucleus in definite circular paths of fixed radius and energy, and these paths are called orbits or energy levels or shells. We all are aware with the structure of atom, we have a centrally located nucleus. In the extranuclear part are revolving the negatively charged electrons in their fixed paths, and these paths are having fixed radius and fixed energy, and these paths are known as maybe orbits, maybe shells, maybe energy levels, or maybe stationary states. Why are they called energy levels or stationary state? Let me tell you here. Because every orbit or every shell has a definite amount of energy. That means the energy of the every shell is fixed, and hence we call these shells as energy levels, or we may call them as stationary states because their energy is constant, and hence this is postulate number 1. Number 2, only those energy levels are permitted for an electron in which the angular momentum of an electron is quantized, that is an integral multiple of h upon 2 pi. This postulate number 2 means that in not all energy levels can the electron move. It will move in only those energy levels where its angular momentum is quantized, means it has a definite value. Angular momentum, what is angular momentum? See, every one of us know what is momentum. Momentum is the product of the mass and velocity. But for those objects which are moving in circular motion, we state their momentum as angular momentum. And all those which are undergoing linear motion, we call it as linear momentum. So linear momentum is the product of mass and velocity. But angular momentum is the product of mass, velocity, and the radius of the orbit in which the object or the electron is moving. So MVR is the formula to calculate MVR is the symbol to calculate the angular momentum, which is, as according to Bohr, is the integral multiple of h upon 2 pi. So we can write the expression MVR equals to NH upon 2 pi. This means that only in certain permitted energy levels an electron will be able to move, where or those energy levels which are quantized. That means which have a fixed value, or the angular momentum of an electron is quantized, that is, it is an integral multiple of h upon 2 pi. So angular momentum MVR, where m is the mass of electron, v is the velocity of electron, r is the radius of the orbit, n is an integer 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever, h is Planck's constant having a fixed value, and pi is again a constant which is equal to 22 by 7 or 3.14. So this is to calculate the angular momentum of an electron moving in an orbit. third postulate says that so long as the electron is in its own orbit, its energy remains constant. That means it is neither going to lose some amount of energy nor it will gain certain amount of energy when it is moving in its own orbit, own energy level. It will definitely lose, emit or absorb energy when it undergoes a transition from one energy level to another. So next postulate is that when an electron jumps from one energy level to another, then it will emit or absorb energy. For example, it is suppose it is moving from lower to higher energy level, it will absorb energy, but when it is jumping from higher to lower energy level, it will emit certain radiations of suitable frequency, given by the formula nu equals to delta E by H, where delta E is the energy difference between the two energy levels between which the electron is undergoing the transition. So it is given by, nu is given by H2 minus H1 divided by E2 minus E1 divided by H, where delta E is the energy difference between the two energy levels and nu is the frequency of radiation. So what is nu is the frequency of the radiation which an electron is going to emit or absorb when it is moving from one energy level to another, and these energy levels or orbits are having energy, let's say E1 and E2. So nu equals to del E by H, or nu equals to E2 minus E1 by H, where H is Planck's constant, the value of which is 6.626 into 10 to the power minus 34 joules second. The next postulate is the radius of the energy level is given by the formula Rn. Rn is actually the radius of the nth orbit. Radius of the nth energy level is given by n square into a naught, where a naught has a fixed value of 52.9 picometer. N is the shell or the orbit in which the electron is moving, and Rn is the radius of the nth orbit. So remember, this is the formula to calculate the radius of the nth energy level for hydrogen atom. But there are certain other species also which contain one electron. So such species, for example, if you talk of, let's say, He+, He helium atomic number is 2, but plus 1, that means one electron has been lost. So it is again a one electron species similar to hydrogen. Likewise, Li plus 2 is also one electron species, Be plus 3 is also one electron species. So for one electron species other than hydrogen atom, the formula for calculating the radius of the energy level is equal to n square into a naught divided by z, where z is the atomic number. For example, for helium we will take Z2, for lithium we will take Z3, for beryllium we will take Z4. So remember the formula Rn equals to n square into 52.9, which is the value of a naught divided by z, where z is the atomic number. So this formula you will be using when you are asked to calculate the radius of any orbit for one electron species other than hydrogen atom. The energy of the shell is given by the formula. Remember the energy of the shell. En is the energy of the nth energy level, is equals to minus RH divided by n square, where RH is Rydberg's constant, has a value of 2.18 into 10 to the power minus 18 joules. So this is Rydberg's constant, and the value of which is 2.18 into 10 to the power minus 18. So this is the formula to calculate the energy. The formula is minus RH upon n square. But for one electron species other than hydrogen, there is a slight change in the formula, and the formula is minus RH into z square upon n square. This term has to be multiplied by z square. So z is the atomic number. So minus RH into z square divided by n square. RH stands for 2.18 into 10 to the power minus 18 into z square by n square joule per atom. But if we are asked to calculate the energy of the nth energy level in kilojoule per mole, then the formula is minus 1312 into Z square by N square kilojoule per mole. This is with respect to joule per atom, remember. This is with respect to kilojoule per mole. And remember, 1 mole contains how many atoms? Everyone knows Avogadro number equal to 6.022 into 10 to the power 23. So this is the formula to calculate the energy of the nth energy level. Now, to calculate the energy difference, see, we just now discussed that when an electron jumps from one energy level to another, it has to either absorb energy when it is moving from lower to higher energy level, or it has to emit certain amount of energy when it is jumping from higher level to lower level. So this energy difference, which is basically involved in electronic transition, can be calculated by the formula del E equals to E2 minus E1, where E2 is the energy of the second energy level, E1 is the energy of the lower energy level. And when we substitute for E2, just now we have seen the formula minus 2.18 into 10 to the power minus 18 divided by n square minus, then this is the value for E1, which is minus 2.18 into 10 to the power minus 18 n1 square. So this negative and negative becomes positive. So we take 2.18 into 10 to the power minus 18 common. So we have the formula 2.18 into 10 to the power minus 18 1 upon n1 square minus 1 upon n2 square is the formula to calculate the energy difference between the energy difference or the energy required for the transition of an electron from one energy level to another. The frequency of the radiation emitted or absorbed is given by the formula. And what is the formula? The frequency is, we know that frequency is equals to del E by H. So this del E value, if I divide it by Planck's constant, what do I get? 2.18 into 10 to the power minus 18, 1 upon n1 square minus 1 upon n2 square. If divided by Planck's constant, 6.626 into 10 to the power minus 34. On solving for this, I will get 3.29 into 10 to the power 15, 1 upon n1 square minus 1 upon n2 square for hydrogen atom. So this is the formula to calculate the frequency of the radiation emitted or absorbed during electronic transition in an hydrogen atom. The frequency equals to 3.29 into 10 to the power 15, 1 upon n1 square minus 1 upon n2 square. Remember. Next, again for one electron species, if we have to calculate the frequency of the radiation other than hydrogen atom, then we have to multiply the same expression by Z square. So our expression becomes mu equals to 3.29 into 10 to the power 15, 1 upon n1 square minus 1 upon n2 square into Z square, where Z is the atomic number. And lastly, last and final, the wave number of the radiation is given by, what is wave number? Is the reciprocal of wavelength. We know that wave number is reciprocal of wavelength. So if we know this formula also, mu equals to c by lambda. So if in place of 1 by lambda I substitute mu bar, because mu bar is equals to 1 upon lambda. So c into 1 by lambda or c into mu bar, that is frequency. So to calculate the mu bar, that is the wave number, is given by mu upon c. So we will substitute the value of mu divided by c, which is the velocity of light. So on solving for this, we get the formula which we had already seen, Rydberg's formula, 10 to the power 7, 1 upon n1 square minus 1 upon n2 square is the formula to calculate the wave number of the radiation when an electron jumps from one energy level to another. So these are the various formulas of the Bohr's atomic model. You have to prepare all these formulas for numerical type of questions which may be asked from this content. Let's now talk about the achievements and the limitations of the drawbacks of Bohr's atomic model. Number one, achievement number one, it could explain the stability of an atom. Number two, it could explain the spectrum of hydrogen and one electron species. Number three, it helps to calculate the energy of an electron in a given orbit or given energy level. Number four, it helps to calculate the radius of an orbit in hydrogen atom in one electron species. So in the previous slide, we discussed about the various formulas which we can use for calculating the energy of an electron. Also, we can calculate the radius of an orbit in which the electron is moving, not only for hydrogen but also for one electron species. It also easily explains the line spectrum of hydrogen atom, and most importantly, it overcomes the drawback of Rutherford, which could not explain the stability of an atom, but this model of Bohr clearly explains the stability of atom. Next, if we talk of the limitations, it could not explain the spectrum of multi-electron atoms. It could only explain the spectrum of hydrogen or one electron species like hydrogen. But for the multi-electron species, it failed to explain the spectrum of the multi-electron species. It could not explain the Zeeman effect. What is Zeeman effect? It is a splitting of spectral lines in the magnetic field. Under the influence of magnetic field, the line spectrum or the lines in the spectrum, they further undergo splitting, and this phenomena is known as Zeeman effect, which could not be explained by Bohr. In the same manner, under the influence of electric field, the spectral lines further undergo splitting, and this phenomena is known as Stark effect, which could not again be explained by Bohr. So number three, it could not explain Stark effect, splitting of spectral lines in electric field. It was not in accordance with the Heisenberg uncertainty principle. We will study what is Heisenberg uncertainty principle. And it could not explain the de Broglie concept in the dual nature of matter. So these were the various limitations or drawbacks of the Bohr's atomic model. And to summarize all these drawbacks, that no explanation was given for the spectrum of the multi-electron species. It could not explain the Zeeman and the Stark effect. It could not explain the de Broglie concept and the dual nature of matter. Neither could it explain the Heisenberg uncertainty principle. Now when we talk of what is dual nature of matter, dual means double. So matter exhibits both the characteristics particle as well as wave nature. So particle nature, which is proved by the phenomena of reflection, refraction and photoelectric effect. How photoelectric effect? Whatever photoelectrons are ejected from the metal surface, when they strike the zinc sulfide screen, they produce a scintillation or a dot on the screen, and this is known as photoelectric effect. So this dot which was produced on the zinc sulfide screen as a result of ejection of photoelectrons could easily be proved by the particle nature of matter. Wave nature was confirmed by Davison and Germer experiment. The diffraction pattern observed when a beam of electron falls on the nickel crystal is similar to that of X-rays, which shows wave nature. So it was concluded that the electrons also exhibit wave nature because the diffraction pattern which they were showing, it was just similar to the diffraction pattern of X-rays. And since X-rays show wave nature, it was concluded that electrons also show wave nature. This was the experiment conducted by Davison and Germer. So we have two types of characteristics exhibited by light or maybe matter. And what are those characteristics? That is particle nature as well as wave nature. So let us in this context derive a de Broglie relationship. And de Broglie relationship is the relationship between the wavelength and the velocity, or wavelength and the mass of the object. So we are going to derive it as a very simple derivation of two steps. E equals to mc square according to Einstein's mass energy relationship, and E equals to hc by lambda, because we know E equals to h nu. in accordance to Planck's quantum theory, and nu equals to c by lambda. So E equals to hc by lambda in accordance to Max Planck's quantum theory. So equation 1 and 2 LHS is same. We can equate them, and on equating, the c cancels with this c. What is left is lambda equals to h upon mc, where c is the velocity of light, lambda is the wavelength, h is the Planck's constant, and m is the mass of the body. In the same manner, if it is not in terms of light or any other object, we can replace c by v, lambda equals to h upon mv. Again, v stands here for the velocity of the object or the body. And since we know that the product of mass and velocity is linear momentum, so we can replace, instead of m into v, we can replace it by p. So the expression becomes lambda equals to h upon p. So this is all about the relation between of the de Broglie, given by de Broglie, related to dual nature of matter. Next, we proceed towards the Heisenberg uncertainty principle, which states that it is not possible for us to determine accurately the exact position and velocity of a subatomic particle simultaneously. So, this is Heisenberg uncertainty principle, which says that it is very difficult for us to measure accurately and correctly the correct position and velocity of a subatomic particle simultaneously. So, the expression for Heisenberg given by Heisenberg was del x into n delta v is equal to or greater than h upon 4 pi, where delta x is the uncertainty in the measurement of position, delta v is the uncertainty in the measurement of the velocity, m is the mass of the particle, h is the Planck's constant, and pi is again a constant having a value of 22 by 7 or 3.14. So if I can replace this m delta v by momentum, because we know product of mass and velocity is momentum, so in place of this I can write delta p. So my expression now becomes del x into delta p is equal to or greater than h upon 4 pi. So remember, this is a very important mathematical expression given by Heisenberg, and this principle is known as Heisenberg's uncertainty principle. So this h upon 4 pi, to simplify your calculation, you can learn this value of h upon 4 pi. H is 6.626 into 10 to the power minus 34 divided by 4 into pi value is 3.14. So when you solve for this, you get 0.527 into 10 to the power minus 34. So this h upon 4 pi has a value of 0.527 into 10 to the power minus 34. If you will memorize this value, it will save your calculation time and there will be no error in your calculation. In the same manner, if it is in terms of electron, if it is not in terms of any other object, it is in terms of the subatomic particle electron, then this m will go in the denominator here. So h upon 4 pi me, all of these are constants. H is 6.626 into 10 to the power minus 34, 4 into 3.14 into mass of electron, which has a fixed value of 9.1 into 10 to the power minus 31. So on solving for all these constants, we get 5.79 into 10 to the power minus 5. So directly for this, you can apply the value 5.79 into 10 to the power minus 5 again to ease out your calculation. So let us practice one numerical. Calculate delta V of an electron if delta X given as 100 picometer. You all should know, earlier we had already studied that 1 picometer equals to 10 to the power minus 12 meters. So 100 picometer will be equal to 10 to the power minus 10 meter. 10 to the power minus 10 meter. So calculate delta V of an electron if delta X is 100 picometer. So we will take the same formula, that is this formula. Delta V equals to H upon 4 pi ME. h upon 4 pi into me into delta x. And this value, I told you to learn this value, which is 5.79 into 10 to the power minus 5 divided by delta x, which is 100 into 10 to the power minus 12 meters. That means 10 to the power minus 10 meters. So when you solve for this, you get 5.79 into 10 to the power 5 meters per second. So practice few more numerical problems from your NCERT back exercises related to Heisenberg uncertainty principle and de Broglie equation. So this is all about these topics, and we'll move towards now the quantum numbers and the rules for the filling in electrons in atoms. Let us now study a very important topic of the unit, structure of atom, that is quantum numbers. So quantum numbers, we will discuss first what are quantum numbers, how many types of quantum numbers do we have, and what is the significance of each type of quantum number. So let us start with the introduction of the quantum numbers. So these are a set of 4 numbers which gives the complete information about an electron in an atom. That is, it will tell us about in which shell the electron is moving, in which subshell the electron is moving, what is the energy of the electron, how far that electron is from the nucleus, what is the spin of an electron while it is moving around the nucleus of an atom. So all this complete information is rendered by 4 quantum numbers, and we will study each one of the quantum numbers in detail. So quantum numbers, a set of 4 numbers which give complete information about an electron in an atom, its energy, the shell and the subshell in which the electron is moving, the shape of the subshell and the spin of the electron which is moving around the nucleus. So all this complete information about the electron is given by quantum numbers. The very first type of quantum number let us study is known as principal quantum number. This is principal quantum number, and this quantum number is also called primary quantum number. Principal or primary quantum number, designated by small n, variable is small n. Let us see what all things it tells us about. It tells us about the shell in which the electron is present. And we had already discussed in our first video lecture about the electronic configuration of elements, where we learnt about the shells, subshells, orbitals, etc. So there are different types of shells in which the electron moves around the nucleus. For example, K, L, N, N shell, etc. So in which shell the electron is moving, this information is provided by principal quantum number. So it tells us about the shell in which the electron is moving. For example, if the electron is moving in the K shell, the principal quantum number will be 1. For example, if it is moving in the L shell, the value of N will be 2. M shell, it will be 3. N shell, it will be 4. And so on. So it will tell us about the shell in which the electron is moving. Number 2, it tells us about the energy of an electron in a particular shell. How does it tell us about the energy of an electron in a particular shell? We studied in the Bohr's postulate, where we framed the formula for calculation of energy of an electron in nth energy level, and the formula was minus 2.18 into 10 to the power minus 18 upon n square, and n is here the principal quantum number. So n, the n value is directly proportional to energy. Greater the n value, higher is the energy of the electron. To explain this, let me take 2 examples of lithium and sodium. The configuration of lithium is 1s2, 2s1, and that of sodium is neon 3s1. That means the valence electron of lithium is in the second energy level, L shell, but the valence electron of sodium is in the third energy level, that is the N shell. So the value of principal quantum number for an electron, valence electron in sodium is 3, and that for lithium is 2. So the valence electron of sodium has more energy than that of lithium, because the valence electron of sodium is in N equals to 3, and that for lithium is in N equals to 2. And remember, that n value is directly proportional to energy. Number 3, it tells us about the average distance of the electron from the nucleus. The valence electron of sodium is far away than the valence electron of lithium. Why? Because n value is also again directly proportional to the average distance. As it was directly proportional to the energy, in the same manner, n is directly proportional to the average distance. So let's take again this example, lithium 1s2, 2s1, sodium, neon 3s1. Here the valence electron is in energy level n, that is n equals to 3, and here it is in n equals to 2. For sodium, the value of n is greater, hence we say that the valence electron of sodium is far away from the nucleus in comparison to the valence electron of lithium, for which the n value is lower than that of sodium. So, it tells us about the average distance of the electron from the nucleus. It tells us about the total number of orbitals present in the shell. Total number of orbitals present in the shell, the formula to calculate that is n square. For example, we know we have different shells K, L, M, N. We had discussed earlier that K shell comprises of S subshell, L will have S and P, M will have S, P and D, and N will have S, P, D and F, all the 4 different types of subshell. We are also aware that each subshell, S, P, D, F, it contains fixed number of orbitals. The number of orbitals present in the S subshell are 1, P are 3, D are 5, F are 7. So these are the subshells and these are the orbitals present in them. So if K shell is having S subshell and S subshell has 1 orbital, so by N square we can calculate the number of orbitals, because for K shell N is 1. So 1 square is 1, that means we have altogether 1 orbital in the K shell. Let's talk of L shell. It is having 2 subshells S and P, altogether 1 orbital of S and 3 orbitals of P, altogether 4 orbitals are present. That can also come from this formula 2 square, which is 4, and here you can see it has 4 orbitals. In the same manner, next shell, which is containing N shell, which is containing S, P and D, that is 3 types of subshells, and the number of orbitals are 1 of S, 3 of P and 5 of D, altogether 9 orbitals. And if you do square of 3, you get 9. So N square is the direct formula to predict or calculate the number of orbitals present in a shell. And we had already studied earlier that each orbital accommodates a maximum of 2 electrons. So when you multiply this formula N square by 2, you will get the formula for the total number of electrons that can be accommodated in a shell, and the formula is 2n square. It tells us about the total number of electrons present in a shell by the formula 2n square. For example, if we say that for K the number of orbital is 1, so altogether 2 electrons will be accommodated. For L shell, the N square, the number of orbitals is 4, so altogether 8 electrons will be accommodated. That means you have to multiply the number of electrons by 2, because each orbital can accommodate a maximum of 2 electrons. For M shell, 18 electrons can be accommodated. For N shell, 16 twos are 32 electrons can be accommodated. So these were the different significance. In a nutshell, let us revise what are the significance of principal quantum number. Number 1, telling us about the type of shell, whether K, L, M, N, in which the electron is present. Number 2, tells us about the energy of the electron in a shell. For example, you have to remember N value is directly proportional to energy. Number 3, tells us about the average distance of the electron from the nucleus, and again N value is directly proportional to the average distance. Number 4, tells us about the number of orbitals in a shell by the formula N square. And number 5 tells us about the total number of electrons present in a shell by the formula 2n square. So you have to learn all the significance of the very first type of quantum number, which is very, very important and gives the complete information of the shell in which the electron is present. The energy of the electron, the average distance of the electron from the nucleus, the number of orbitals present in a shell, and the number of electrons that can be accommodated in a shell. So this was the very first quantum number, principal quantum number. After that, we move on to the next, that is azimuthal quantum number. Azimuthal quantum number, also known by different names, secondary quantum number or angular momentum quantum number or subsidiary quantum number, is designated by the variable small l. Principal quantum number designated by variable small n, and azimuthal designated by the variable small l. So, what is the significance? It tells us about the type of subshell in which the electron is present. We had already discussed that we have 4 different types of subshells, S, P, T and F. For every subshell, the value of azimuthal quantum number L is fixed. For S subshell, L is 0. For P subshell, L is 1. For D subshell, L is 2. For F subshell, L is 3. So it will give an idea about the subshell in which the electron is present. For example, if I write n equals to 3 and L equals to 0, that means which subshell am I talking of? I am talking of 3s subshell, because L0 corresponds to the S subshell and N3 corresponds to the third shell, that is the principal quantum number. That means the number of shell in which the electron is present. So this refers to as the S subshell of the third shell, which is the N shell. Next, it tells us about the energies of an electron in a subshell. And remember, L value is directly proportional to the energy of the electron. Like L value is also directly proportional to the energy of the electron. And remember that the electron present in S subshell is less energetic than that in P, than that in D, than that in F. That means the electron in the F subshell has the L value equals to 3 and L value being directly proportional to energy. So the electron of the F subshell is more energetic than the electron of the D subshell, than the electron of the P subshell, than the electron of the S subshell. So number 2 tells us about the energies of an electron in a subshell. Number 3 tells us about the shape of the subshell. The shape of the subshell, remember, every subshell has a definite shape. S is spherical or circular in shape, P is dumbbell in shape, D is double dumbbell in shape, and F has a diffuse geometry. So, if I say L equals to 2, then I am talking of D subshell. What shape clicks to your mind? The shape which clicks to our mind is double dumbbell, because the shape of the D subshell is double dumbbell. If I say L equals to 0, I am talking of S subshell. What shape clicks to our mind? The shape is spherical. So, it gives an idea about the shape of the subshell, since every subshell has a definite or a fixed shape. So, by knowing the L value, we can predict the shapes of the subshell as well. Next, it tells us about the angular momentum of an electron present in a given subshell by the formula root of L into L plus 1 h upon 2 pi, where L is the value of azimuthal quantum number and h is Planck's constant. So, the angular momentum can be calculated by knowing the L value. That is why this type of quantum number is also called angular momentum quantum number. For example, we need to calculate the angular momentum of the electron present in the S subshell. Remember, for S subshell, L is equals to 0 and anything multiplied by 0 will become 0. For example, we need to calculate for the P subshell. For P subshell, remember L is 1. So we will substitute L equals to 1. We get 2. 2 times 1 is root 2. And this 2, that means can be written as root 2 into root 2. This can be written as root 2 into root 2. So 1 root 2 and 1 root 2 will cancel. What is left is h upon root 2 pi. H upon root 2 pi. Now please calculate the angular momentums of the electron present in the d and the f subshell, and please write in the comment section and let me know what will be the value of angular momentum of an electron present in the d subshell and present in the f subshell. You have to calculate the angular momentum of the electron present in these two subshells. And finally, you have to remember, for any given value of n, the value of L ranges from 0 to n minus 1. Value of L will be from 0 to n minus 1. For example, if n is 1, L will have only one value, that is 0. For example, n is 2, L will have two values, 0 and 1. For example, L is 3, n is 3, L will have two values, n3, L will have 0, 1, 2 value. That means we can conclude the L value can never be equal to the L value. That means for any n value, the value of L will range from 0 to n minus 1. For example, if n is equals to 3, then L will have three values, 0, 1, 2. L cannot be equal to 3 because for any n value, the value of L will range from 0 to n minus 1. That means the maximum L value will be 1 less than the n value. That means we can say the n and L values can never be same. So now we are going to discuss about the next two quantum numbers.